ultimate renegade beauty nutrient. Listen in to Nadine's conversation about this life-changing longevity and beauty nutrient backed up by 13,000 scientific studies with the leading edge lady who makes it all possible.
Today we are going to do a deep dive into a nutrient that I am so thoroughly impressed with that I had to share it with all of you. This nutrient, this mighty molecule, is generated in our bodies and found in every cell, every person, every animal, and every plant on the planet. Yet it remained relatively inaccessible until my friend, Leslie Kinney, created a clean and concentrated extract of this molecule that has over 13,000 scientific studies backing up substantive claims that it helps with 6 of the 9 hallmarks of aging. This concentrated substance is scientifically proven to induce autophagy, which is the word for the body's cellular renewal and recycling process that slows with aging and inflammation. It induces mitophagy, which is the selective removal of dysfunctional mitochondria, and lipophagy, which regulates the process of intracellular lipids, aka fats, and adipose tissue. It helps with protein folding, protecting telomeres, which are on the tips of chromosomal DNA strands and are key to longevity. It deepens sleep, resets the circadian clock, clears inactive senescent cells, and increases stem cell production. It sounds way too good to be true, and especially with all of these benefits in one substance. Yet the list goes on and on. It is a kidney and liver protective. It is tissue regenerative. It increases cognition, and that vital part of our brain that shrinks as we age, the hippocampus, experiences growth. This molecule also regulates melanogenesis in the epidermis, leading to the fading of melasma and possibly the repigmentation of gray hair, and so much more. While it cleans up and cares for key body systems and deep cellular processes, it blesses the body with an ample amount of amazing beauty bonuses. Cells get cleaned up without having to fast, while smooth, glowing skin gets revealed. Freckles fade as shiny, fuller hair and eyelashes grow, while strengthened nails emerge. And the changes aren't subtle. It has an effect that I have never experienced with any other food, herb, vitamin, or mineral substance. As you can perhaps tell, I feel so passionate about sharing the possibilities of this nutrient with you that I've invited my friend, Leslie Kinney, to have a conversation with us about the science that has made this substance possible and available to us. Leslie is the founder of Oxford Healthspan, maker of Spermidine, a company dedicated to identifying anti-aging compounds with strong clinical safety profiles and making these substances available to us. Prior to forming Oxford Healthspan, Leslie was a Southern California entrepreneur and a Berkeley and Harvard grad, whose life was turned upside down when she was diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. And when her doctors told her that lupus had a 5-year life expectancy and that rheumatoid arthritis could only be managed, not cured, she set out to optimize her health with safe, natural solutions. And here we are today, way past that 5-year diagnosis. Leslie, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining me today.
Wow. Thank you for that really, really juicy intro. So kind of you. I cannot thank you enough. And thank you for having me here. It's a real honor.
Thank you. And so you are joining us. I'm in Canada, and you are joining us from Oxford, England.
That's right. That's right. The heart of medieval Oxford.
And that's perfect because I love your story. So on your path to the present day, It seems like all things came into confluence for you at Oxford University. Your search for viable polyamines with autoimmune and longevity effects, access to world-class Oxford scientists, and fascinating finds in ancient scrolls. Tell us about the adventure of finding this substance.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. It was the perfect confluence of many different life events. And I came to Oxford because my husband was born and raised here, and both of his parents were very much a part of the university. My father-in-law is a philosopher. And at these academic parties, I was in a position to meet a lot of really amazing thinkers. And also, even when taking my children to school here, I would talk to a mother or a father and then find out that they were doing some kind of amazing breakthrough science. As a patient and an autoimmune survivor, I really was intrigued by this world-class science not necessarily progressing into a commercialized product benefiting people the way I wanted to see it. And so I would sometimes volunteer, hey, I'll help you find some money for this. It's such a great project. Let me help. And that turned into a fundraising gig for regenerative medicine companies, spin-outs from the University of Oxford, either doing stem cells or helping with circadian rhythm, looking at a stem cell expansion. So say from stem cells from umbilical cords, you have to grow those so that you have enough to use in treatment, and even ketone research. And while doing this, I was introduced to an amazing immunologist named Katja Simon. And she was working on spermidine, this crazy molecule I had never heard of. However, the name was so intriguing, kind of off-putting, depending on who you're talking to, but more intriguing if you talk to other people, because it was first found in sperm. And this was first seen under the microscope by the Dutch biologist Antony van Leeuwenhoek in the 17th century. And we didn't really understand what its role was until the 20th century, when we learned that it helped protect DNA in semen. And nature is so perfect. It takes the important things and it puts them where they are most needed. And obviously, as mammals, we are here to procreate. And one of our most precious resources would be the egg and the sperm. And the fact that spermidine is so important and has such a critical role in protecting DNA as it is transferred from one generation to the next just underscores how mighty this molecule is. So in Katja's research, which was looking at the immune system, she noticed that it was helpful with the aging immune system in mice models. So since that time, her lab has done research on spermidine and rejuvenating elderly human cells in vitro. So that would be in a petri dish. And there's an exciting study that will be done soon in humans. So definitely watch this space. When I then began to look at what else spermidine might be useful for, though, I just found study after study after study. Now, for regulatory reasons, any studies that have been conducted in mice, I'm not allowed to talk about, unfortunately. You've mentioned some of them. Mm-hmm. And I would Google and just hit about spermidine, and you will find a lot of studies on the pleiotropic effects of spermidine.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you
Can
got
you explain that word so that people understand?
So pleiotropic simply means that it has a multitude of positive effects throughout the body. And I think that is actually one of the problems with spermidine, is that it has so many benefits that it almost sounds too good to be true. Mm-hmm. And that's why we like to look at some of the beauty benefits. And you alluded to, the research on how it promotes hair growth and how it can reverse gray hair, how it helps with strengthening nails and it helps with skin. Topically applied, it also helps with gene expression of collagen and elastin. The reason that we like to look at the beauty effects is because a lot of these pleiotropic effects are happening under the hood. They're inside the body and we can't see them. We might know that the studies say it's good for things like telomere lengthening or autophagy or making sure that mitochondria function better and we feel more energetic. But if we can't see it, we might not believe it. That's why looking at a place that has very high cell turnover, which is hair, nails, and skin, is sort of proof in the pudding. And it demonstrates what probably all of us have thought, that when you are in good health, radiant health, your hair, your skin, and your nails look good. It's probably why the hair coloring industry is so big, why nail bars are so popular, why the skin and beauty industry is so massive. It's because we all know that that is a symbol of true health.
Yeah, so how fun is it when we can actually, create that true health and have the shiny nail without the lacquer on top? That's what's exciting for me. I mean, I may have expressed this in the intro, but I've been around the biohacking block. I've experimented with all the leading edge supplements over the past, few decades. So, I got the Spermidine and of course it was like, yeah, it'll do that and that. And kind of forgot about it, but I just started taking it. And I've never, ever, ever experienced transformation from any food or supplements. It's just blowing my mind. Because I don't, for the autophagy and the mitophagy, we can't see that. Although I've taken many things that help with that, like glutathione or all that kind of stuff. And so when you're seeing it in the hair, skin, and nails, and I saw, like shinier hair and nails within about a week, which I know it's different for everybody, but the friends that on our team that are on it, they're just finding, like some people are finding like a lot of shifts in a week. A few men that I have on it in their 50s are like really getting that thicker hair of their youth, which is, super exciting. And then it's springtime, so I'm getting my vitamin D in, engaging with the sun. And what's so neat is I'm finding that the little bit of freckle that would increase on like arms, that kind of stuff, it's like I'm getting more tanned and the freckles are fading at the same time that I'm, getting more golden. So that's super cool.
That's a really interesting effect, because I would have suspected that might happen with something like astaxanthin. So very, very
I have had that, but not, and that's a great thing. But again, I have not seen any substance do this and all of it at once. So that's so cool.
It is definitely fun. When I first started taking our particular Spermidine supplement, I was actually on another Spermidine supplement for about a year and a half. And so I wasn't particularly expecting something so dramatically different, but I woke up one day and, washed my face and sort of looked at myself, looked at my eyes in the mirror, as you do first thing in the morning. And I had to do a double take because my eyelashes had grown so long. And I'm half Chinese. My mom's from Taiwan. And I've never had super long lashes. But this was very strange. At the age of 56, to have really long lashes, I wondered what was going on.
Oh, it's so exciting.
It does have that effect. And it's interesting that it happens so quickly with you and with your teammates, because in vitro studies of human hair follicles that have been subjected to Spermidine in a kind of bath, those human hair follicles have shown increased anagen activity after only 6 days. So it does happen in hair and eyelashes very, very quickly. We've definitely had men also notice. So we had one of the masters of an Oxford College, Sir Christopher Ball, who is the Guinness World Record holder for most marathons run in the shortest number of days. So he ran 10 marathons in 10 days, and he's 84 now.
Right
he
on.
said that he was really surprised that his nails were growing faster. And this isn't an 84-year-old, right? And this isn't a guy, and men just don't notice these things the way that women do, right?
Yes.
So it's quite fascinating to see, and also repigmentation.
Yes.
So we have several people who are in their 60s, both men and women, who have said they have noticed new hairs growing. They can see them at the hairline, and their original hair color.
That's so great.
Yeah, which is an extra benefit, right? But
the juicy part is that all these beauty things are happening, but thankfully it is on a deeper level. So, the beautiful herb like Hoshi Wu, which is a traditional herb for hair pigmentation and shininess and stuff. But I haven't heard of these kind of effects, but that may be great for the hair, but is it taking care of autophagy and metophagy at the same time?
No, it's not. So I've taken Hashimoto as well, and also tea and Japanese knotweed, different names.
Yeah,
I've taken it before too, but you do need to cycle on and off of that particular herb, because it can be, some studies have shown it can be liver toxic. And so I've been very careful with it. Whereas with the spermidine, I'm just on it all the time, because I want autophagy, cellular autophagy, to be happening on a continual basis. My body is creating new cells all the time, and I want to make sure that they are in tip-top shape, which means making sure the mitochondria are not worn out. The more new and shiny they are, the better they function, the better the process of making adenosine triphosphate, ATP, the better that becomes. I want to make sure that the proteins inside the cell are folded properly, again, because the cell then works more efficiently. And another thing, if you, what the body does with autophagy is that any worn out parts are actually recycled and are used to create energy in the body as well. So it's this very beautiful system. We're just helping the body do what it knew how to do when it was younger, because we produce spermidine, as you said in your intro. All plants, all animals, we produce it endogenously, and 2/3 of our needs are met by production in our tissues and in our gut biome. But as we get older, just as we don't produce as much estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, as we don't produce as much glutathione, melatonin, all of those things drop off. The same happens with spermidine. And that means we need to rely on our gut biome to produce it, or to get it from food. And naturally, in some people, the gut biome is able to produce it. But if you've been exposed to a lot of antibiotics, and many of us have been, have had multiple courses of antibiotics. I mean, if you go, and have any dental procedure, antibiotics, and there's a serious knock-on effect to production of spermidine. And as a result, we do need to think about getting it from exogenous sources. And in nature, we find it in things like shiitake mushrooms, fermented foods. Something like cheddar cheese has actually been studied. So, I'm rooting for the Cheddar Valley cheese industry here. But, there is high spermidine content in that. Parmesan as well. In the rind, the closer you get to the rind, the more spermidine you find. You can find it in natto, which is a fermented Japanese soybean, and
which is a good source of K2 as well.
And it's a great source of K2. That's right. That's absolutely right. The natto, actually, that is made on the island of Okinawa, famously one of the blue zones known for its extreme longevity, they actually ferment their natto for an entire year.
Wow.
Whereas in other parts of Japan, the fermentation process is shorter. So I have often wondered if that is, that might be one element in their secret longevity sauce there.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. But, so all of those things that I mentioned, we don't always get those into our diet. Wheat germ has it. But wheat germ, and you probably know this because I'm sure you're careful with wheat germ and with nuts, if they are not handled properly, they need to be refrigerated. Things need to be activated, right?
Yeah, the oils are so fragile.
The oils are incredibly fragile. They go rancid very quickly. So you need to know how it was manufactured. You need to make sure it doesn't, it's been stored properly, hasn't gone rancid on the way from manufacturer to market. And then once you get it from the market to your home, you need to also care for it and ensure that it is in optimum conditions to prevent rancidity. So what we actually did, because our spermidine, actually is made from highly concentrated wheat germ, but we took the fat out because we didn't want any opportunity for rancidity. I often say, as an autoimmune survivor, I have used up 8 of my 9 lives, and I am so careful about what I put into my body. I think my husband, my kids would say, "Oh, she's so high maintenance," but I'm just looking out after my health, right? Yeah, I don't. Once you have an autoimmune condition, I've had 3, Hashimoto's, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, you start picking these up like Happy Meal characters. And I just, I can't afford to go back to that life, and I can't afford to pick up anymore. So quality is really, really important to me. If I wouldn't put it into my body, I'm not putting it out there.
Yeah, same here. So let's talk about it too. So your beautiful Spermidine, which is the extract of spermidine, you've been able to find a way to concentrate it. Mm-hmm. You've got whole spectrum. You've removed the oils that can go rancid, which is very key. Now, and how you've been speaking about you being really pristine about what you put in your body, because I'm the same way. That's why we've got Living Libations. And
that makes sense.
And it's wheat germ, so it's gluten. And like you and I, a lot of people that we know have, not eaten gluten in many years.
Yep.
And so I'm also here to say I haven't eaten gluten about really hardcore for about 7 years, but I am loving the spermidine and not finding any gluten sensitivity with it. So hopefully you can explain more about that too, because I'm sure you're not into gluten.
No, I'm not. As a matter of fact, when I got my call from the doctor saying, "Can you please come in and talk about your test results?" When I got that, there is no cure for this and yours is pretty bad. It looks like your body's fighting cancer call. I threw the kitchen sink at my illnesses. And of course, I went dairy and gluten-free right away. Yeah. I haven't had gluten since 2004. And when I saw this product, I thought, okay, this is quite interesting. It's a small amount. So when I've done my genetic testing, and I have one of the celiac genes. So I'm heterozygous. I'm not homozygous for it. So I don't have both. That means I'm just gluten sensitive, but I'm not celiac. And I do not recommend our product for celiacs. But for those who are gluten sensitive, it is, at least who I know who have taken it, it does not appear to be a problem. And what is interesting when you think about gluten sensitivity is you think about zonulin upregulation. Zonulin is a compound that was discovered at Harvard Med School, and it actually causes the tight junctions of the gut lining to open and become permeable, which allows undigested proteins in the gut to go into the bloodstream. The bloodstream then identifies them as foreign and mounts an immune attack to get rid of them. Unfortunately, some of those undigested proteins look like proteins that we have in our thyroid tissue, that we have in our joints. And Ed Bullmore, head of psychiatry at the University of Cambridge, says that it can even be brain tissue, and that can lead to a cytokine storm in the brain, so that some of the mental illnesses could be autoimmune related. So gluten has been implicated in these autoimmune attacks. And I certainly didn't want that to happen with our product. But the flip side is that spermidine, as a polyamine, is shown to actually downregulate zonulin. So it actually leads to the tightening of these tight junctions to make the gut lining, more secure. And as a matter of fact, spermidine as a molecule is so important that it's in human breast milk. And the idea, human breast milk is high in fat, it's high in fructooligosaccharides, which the baby's, nascent digestive system cannot digest, and it's got spermidine. Why is the spermidine there? It is there to actually make the gut wall stronger so that the baby's gut will be able to digest things. The fructooligosaccharides are there, of course, to feed the population of happy, healthy gut bugs.
They're like the prebiotics.
They're the prebiotics, exactly. And they will selectively feed spermidine in mother's milk, selectively feeds Fusobacteria, Bacteroides bacteria, which also both express spermidine. So, it's this perfect synthesis that we see in nature. For us to actually come up with such a perfect system, well, nature has had millions of years to do this. And it's just so beautiful. So we wanted to have a fructooligosaccharide with our product, which we do have as well, to help with the body's own production of spermidine. But back to the gluten question, the amount of gluten that we have is the equivalent of around 1/100th of the amount of gluten you would find in a slice of bread. So picture a slice of bread, slice it into 100 pieces, and the gluten in that 1/100th piece is the equivalent of what's in our daily dosage.
It's like a little bit of a crumb, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now for celiacs, that's poison, right? So, that's why we're very clear about that. And fructooligosaccharides are very beneficial, but if you have an intolerance because you've got small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, otherwise known as SIBO, then, fructooligosaccharides might blow you up a little bit. And you might feel, just feel a little bit windy. For those people who might try a FODMAPs diet, to eliminate the things that are causing that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, this would not be the product for them. They need to heal and seal their gut first, and then they can do this.
That makes a lot of sense. So maybe now's a good time to sort of talk about like dosing and like what's the daily intake, that kind of thing. How do we take it?
Okay. So our daily dosage is 1 milligram, which is 3 capsules. And we suggest that people start with 1 capsule, which is 1/3 of a dose, with a meal, preferably the evening meal. And if they tolerate that fine, then they titrate up the next day to 2 capsules. And then on the 3rd day at dinner, they will be able to take the full 3 capsule dosage. 1 milligram is the minimum effective dose that has been shown to help with subjective cognitive decline and improved memory. So that was why we chose that. That was in human clinical trials. So, mouse trials, wonderful, but we really need to know what's going on in humans. And that was the reason for choosing that dosage.
That's awesome. And I've found like sometimes I'll pop the capsules and then sometimes I will also open them up. Is it very easily mixes with water and it's so neutral tasting.
It's neutral. It was very funny because I was talking to one of the associate professors of pharmacology here, a Canadian named Grant Churchill. And he was saying, he wanted to experiment with spermidine. And but the smell of it was so disgusting that he just couldn't bring himself to do it. So I actually showed him, a jar of the powder, and he smelled it and said, "Oh, it's so neutral," which is exactly how it is. It's perhaps a little bit like milk powder. It doesn't have much of a taste.
Yeah, I find it like similar to like a probiotic. If I open it, it's sort of this they're very easy to slip into foods and smoothies and stuff.
Exactly.
Let's talk about some of the human studies, because that's obviously just so exciting when we've got human trials that are showing efficacy and safety. One of the ones I'm thinking about is the hippocampal growth study. I believe that was on humans.
There have been a number of studies on brain health and cognition. And the argument would be that the autophagy is what is allowing the removal of neurotoxic protein aggregates that are responsible for neurological disorders. And that, help with age-induced memory impairment by restoring the synapses to their original function. There are a number of studies on this, and there was actually one that was done in, I think it was around 6 Alzheimer's and dementia nursing homes in Austria or Germany. And they snuck the spermidine into their bread rolls just to see if it would, help. And it did. So after 3 months of supplementation, but through these bread rolls, they actually showed that it worked. And it didn't matter if the bread rolls had 1 milligram of spermidine in them or if they had a higher dosage. The effect was the same. They had better memory, better ability to act independently.
Wow.
Which is incredible, because that is a group that is obviously at the sharp end of the medical stick.
And not having the best food.
And that's right, exactly. And we wouldn't necessarily think that food would be able to make a difference, but it does. And, what you put into your mouth, what you put into your mind, these things make a huge difference to human health.
So, it's good that there is an option where there can be improvement without doing a full overhaul of lifestyle. That's very exciting. Has any study shown that it helps with BDNF, brain-derived neutrophic factors?
I feel like there have, but the problem
I'm
is
sure it would.
So much, that we'd have to ask Amy Lamott or Katja I might have to quickly take a look. There, the powers of spermidine in the brain are related to autophagy. So really, as I mentioned in the beginning, really to do with removal of these neurotoxic protein aggregates. And that is...
if you've taken care of that and protein folding, your brain is going to work better. And also like the glymphatic system, which is the newly labeled and discovered, so to speak, lymph system of the brain. And even a word like autophagy is really just become more in our vocabulary in the past 4 years.
Yeah.
And even though we keep talking about autophagy, maybe we can just highlight in this moment that if you're taking care of autophagy and mitophagy, you're really taking care of everything.
Yeah, well, because it's at a cellular level, right? And just like I said before, our bodies are constantly producing new cells, but their ability to do them as they get older declines. The reason why is because autophagy begins to fail. Our spermidine levels go down, autophagy isn't triggered as often. The cells are replaced, but they're not functioning as they should. The mitochondria are not optimized. The protein folding, again, is not happening. Telomeres are becoming shorter. So for all of these reasons, spermidine is beneficial to promote basically better brick building, right? If we think of ourselves as a kind of house, all these bricks, they're constantly replaced. You don't want sloppy brickwork, right? And you want cells that are really, as I said before, optimized. So,
and we don't want like the senescent cells, the quote unquote zombie cells, just staying around and not doing anything except excreting toxins.
So interesting about the zombie cells, cell senescence. That's really the holy grail of anti-aging. And Katja just won a grant to look at spermidine and cell senescence.
Incredible.
So I think there's going to be a lot more revealed in that area. That would be, one of the 3 hallmarks that spermidine we can't really prove yet. There are people who've said they think it probably does, but it's not, it's not definitively shown. So for that, we have to wait. I was just going to go back to your question about BDNF.
Yeah.
So it's actually spermine that protects from memory deficit and helps with BDNF activation. So our supplement, the main polyamine that we have is spermidine, but we also have spermine. So our ratio is sort of 7 to 3 to 1, I believe. And spermine will help with BDNF. So that's why I had remembered it, but because I'm more focused on the spermidine, but there is spermine also in our supplement too.
Yeah, so that's awesome because you've made this whole spectrum supplement. So you're getting the micronutrients of the micronutrient.
Exactly. And this is how it occurs in nature, right? You can get spermidine and spermine and putrescine, which is a precursor to both, in any kind of endosperm. You can get it in the endosperm of rice. You can get it in the endosperm of...
is that why tocotrienols are like healthy?
Yeah, there we go. I hadn't even thought about that. So you find the polyamines as a package. Now, I know that there are people who really are just trying to get spermidine only, but I imagine that taking sort of a holistic approach and taking it as it occurs in nature. My philosophy is I would rather have it in plant form in the way that nature intended rather than just taking it, as a chemical.
That makes a lot of sense. Can we talk a moment about how men have another
their superpowers.
Their superpowers that they can really tap into and even get more than the daily dose.
That's right. So yes, this is so interesting, and one of the strands that I pulled from my past as I learn more about this unusual compound. So another scientist that I met here at the University of Oxford is an emeritus professor of physiology called Dennis Noble. And Dennis is quite remarkable. He's a member of the Royal Society. He has been editor of one of the oldest molecular biochemistry journals for ages. And he was also the tutor to the now Empress of Japan when she was a student at the University of Oxford at Balliol College, Oxford. And he often would be lucky enough to have an audience with her when he would go to Japan on his scientific visits. And he was asked at one of these audiences whether or not he would like to see a imperial household treasure. So one of the emperor's treasures, and it was in the imperial household archive and had to do with human health. So these 30 scrolls, which were written 1,000 years ago by the court physician Yoshiori Tamba, he wrote these as his magnum opus. And they were the culmination of his life's work as a court physician, as third generation of court physicians to the Chinese emperor. And he also took liberally from many now no longer extant books on medicine and human health, drawing from books that were themselves 1,000 years old.
Wow.
So 2,000 years old. And these scrolls, these 30 scrolls, also have among them 3 to do with human longevity, and 1 in particular to do with sexual intimacy and longevity. So, as I spoke to Dennis about this, I said, sexual intimacy and longevity, that's quite fascinating. I actually, have in a past life, I was a sexpert in Asia because I had an online matchmaking company there and had to work with the Chinese government on sexology as sidebar content to the online matchmaking database. And so I knew all about the old Taoist scripts on sexual intimacy and longevity. I knew that the Taoist promoted the idea that men should become slowly aroused by their partners, and rather than orgasming and ejaculating at the same time, they should orgasm internally. And that meant that they would retain their precious fluid. And the idea 1,000 years ago was that this seminal fluid that they were retaining would benefit the brain. So at that time, they believed that this was cerebrospinal fluid. Now, by the time of Da Vinci, we realized through anatomical looking at cadavers and dissection that actually it wasn't seminal fluid, wasn't cerebrospinal fluid that would benefit the brain. In fact, it came from the testes, and that ejaculate had high amounts of spermidine, and putrescine in it. And if a man can actually, I said to Dennis, gee, I think they're right, because if a man is able to internally retain all of that seminal fluid, he will benefit from his body's own ability, his own internal pharmacopoeia's ability to produce spermidine, and putrescine and trigger autophagy systemically. So Dennis, as a physiologist, said, Leslie, you're the only person in Oxford that I can talk to about that. And I think you're right. I think you're right. That would make sense. Because where does it go? It goes back into the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the body is able to take this up and it will distribute it where it's needed. So in seminal fluid, there are around 15 to 50 milligrams of spermidine in the average male ejaculate. And our supplement has 1 milligram per day. The European Food Safety Agency says that you should take, you can supplement with 6 milligrams per day safely, but that's external spermidine. Well, if a guy actually learns to practice this internal orgasm method that the Taoist promoted, then he's actually benefiting from a huge sort of ultra therapeutic dose of spermidine, which is quite fascinating, especially as men get older. And this is what the Taoist said: as you get older, men should, I think you were only to ejaculate 3 in 10 times. And the rest of the time you were to have this internal ejaculation, internal orgasm. Yeah. And again, when you did ejaculate, it was to procreate.
Yes, that makes sense.
So it's quite funny that some of the sexology work that I did back in China, in the late 90s and early 2000s, actually has a role to play now in the work that I do with Dennis.
That is so fascinating. And in the 90s, I was writing my thesis on the female orgasm and for my degree. And while it was more of a look through the history and culture of Western culture, I did have some exploration into Taoism and heard of that practice. And it just sort of spoke about it being about longevity.
Yeah.
But now when you explained it, like all these years later, it's like that actually is why, to me, it would make sense. And I love this idea of the internal pharmacopoeia.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And, internal pharmacopoeia, when we think of things like depression, well, serotonin, a lot of neurotransmitters produced, something like up to 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut. We do actually have this wonderful resource, which is the complex human body, but we need to know how to activate it.
Optimize it, often get out of the way.
As true biohackers, right, we need to put the body in the right environment for it to flourish and do what it intuitively knows how to do. It is, the body has been learning how to do this for, millions of years. And it's a bit to think that we can know better than the body. And of course, in some cases we can, but to think that the body has nothing to contribute is possibly a little arrogant, right?
Mm-hmm. So might lead us into some funny paths.
Yeah, exactly. So
let's talk about lipophagy, cellulite, visceral fat, that fun stuff.
Right. Okay. So lipophagy, it's so interesting. So spermidine, yes, it triggers something called lipophagy. It gets rid of these oxidized lipids, which are not good for us. And when I took our product, I had another, one of these moments in front of the mirror where I had to do a double take, just like with my eyelashes. I did a double take.
I'm having to do that lately.
Yeah. And I thought, what's going on with my thighs? And I've had cellulite since I was 16. This is just, I get this from my American grandmother. I remember she had cellulite. She was always trying to hide it. She hated bathing suits. And I've inherited her tendency to cellulite. And I happened to have lunch with Katja Simon and said, hey, there's this funny effect. In addition to the effects on hair and the positive effects on sleep and probably my lymphatic system, as a result, I'm having this thing with, it feels like my cellulite is decreasing. And she just said, very matter-of-factly, oh, it's probably the lipophagy. And I said, lipophagy? What is that? So she just hadn't even told me about this other thing that it did. Again, the pleiotropic effects. It's sort of, too good to be true. So that was really quite mind-blowing to me that this would actually happen. And we have had reports from clients that it helps with visceral fat. Again, those are just testimonials from clients who say they've tried other things to get rid of their visceral belly fat, the muffin top that no one wants. And it seems to be having an impact there.
Which besides, whether we want to, have that or not, the main thing is really we don't want visceral fat around the organs.
No. It decreases.
There's a health.
Exactly. It is definitely detrimental to health. And of course, any kind of a muffin top for guys is like having an ovary, right? Because that kind of fat actually produces estrogens. And the last thing that a guy wants is a lot of estrogen, right?
Especially as testosterone declines.
Exactly. So that was really quite fascinating.
Well, that alone, and then the skin is. So I feel like hair and nails. I felt first, and that shiny. And again, I thought my nails are strong and shiny, and really my whole life people have been like, oh my God, your nails are so nice, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and they're better. And they're like, shinier, and my hair I thought was shiny and thick, and it's shinier and thicker. And then the skin's been super neat because again, there's this fading as I'm tanning. Like it's like smoothing out, and there's a glow. And then I see even in Ron's skin, like glowing.
Interesting.
And I feel like pores are even getting again, and I didn't have any complaints about my pores,
Yeah.
But even like maybe around the nose, where I think everybody's pores are a tiny bit bigger, they just seem so, and the skin seems tighter. Does that speak to any of the studies or anything?
Well, it does. Topically, there have been studies out of Korea where topical application to the skin has resulted in upregulation or increased expression of genes responsible for collagen and elastin production. And that's a relatively new study. So some of our followers are actually opening the capsule, and you don't need a lot, just taking a tiny bit and putting it in with the serum, like one of your wonderful serums, your sun. So, and then just putting it on, you can have it as a mask or leave it on overnight.
I've been doing that, and I found I take about maybe like a tenth of a capsule.
Yeah,
so I keep a little capsule in the bathroom.
Correct.
And then I was putting it with my serums at night because it would be like a little powdery, or you know what I mean? Like it's there's a little texture, which is so fine. It will sink in. And then you can even, if anybody has like those silicone masks we have, which is just basically our answer to a sheet mask, because you can use it over and over again. And then what it does is it just prevents anything from evaporating off your face, sends all the oils and everything in.
What a good idea.
So it's super good. And then the other fun I've been having with is putting it with our frankincense honey mask.
Ooh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. And then it seems to like take the texture of the powder even better.
Perfect.
And so that's been super fun.
Yeah.
And then you and I are experimenting with brushing with it.
Yes, exactly.
So I'll have more
with
results about
your
that soon.
toothpaste. Exactly. It's such a good idea. Well, for the mouth biome, and what's terrific is you don't have to spit it out, right?
Yeah.
So I think that whether it's topically taken up locally in the skin, or whether you ingest it and it goes systemically throughout the body, it does have good effects on the skin. And again, it goes back to that cellular. It helps with cells. They're building blocks to everything, right? Everything that we look at on us has been built by cells. I think someone said that it takes about 7 years to replace every single cell in your body. I think your bones are the slowest at replacing. Your skin, your hair, your nails are the fastest. And so all we're doing is spermidine, through its ability to promote autophagy, helps make better building blocks. And the proof is really in the pudding. I mean, I'm 56. I have a few gray hairs, not a lot.
Hair is gorgeous.
Thank you.
Gorgeous.
I have a few. I don't know. They say I have, some shine in my hair, and right. I've never had to dye my hair, which is terrific. And I've always said, look, I invest in my health the way that I would invest in my retirement fund.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's,
if not more so, because you want to have fun.
Yeah, well, you want to have fun. you want to look good, and because it hits on your confidence, right? But the other thing is that I started my career in finance in Switzerland, and if you're talking to clients about investing their money for retirement purposes, one of the worst things that can befall a couple is if one of them needs 24/7 wraparound healthcare, right? If you succumb to that, that necessitates two income streams, because you've got to maintain two separate households. Yeah. And so I've always had the philosophy of, I'm investing in my health. My health is my wealth, because if I don't invest in it, God forbid something terrible should happen to my health, and I won't have the income to actually take care of it, right? So I don't want to be a burden on my children. And so I do invest a lot in my health, not just, spermidine, but glutathione, even, of course, B vitamins, lots of other things are part of the mix.
That's awesome. So I've noticed that I've been mentioning with freckles fading and stuff. So what is the spermidine's relationship to that melanocyte layer? Because I feel like this is pretty groundbreaking, working with women and their skincare. I feel like in this past decade, hyperpigmentation and melasma is so huge, but we also have increased processed polyunsaturated fatty acids of like mazola, canola, soy, corn oils, which are really damaging and oxidizing skin.
Yep. So spermidine enhances the expression of something called tyrosine. You've probably seen L-tyrosine, an amino acid 3 and T4, the thyroid hormones. And so spermidine enhances the expression of tyrosine hydroxylase, which is necessary for melanogenesis. And it stimulates melanin synthesis. Now, when you get defects, death of melanocytes, and defects in melanin production, you get something like vitiligo, and you get then these other, sort of hyperpigmentation.
Or hypo. There's hyperpigmentation, hypo, yeah.
It's hyper and hypo, exactly. So you get these different patches. So the idea is that sort of bringing increasing the expression of tyrosine, you actually are enhancing the integrity of the melanocytes and you decrease those defects in melanin production.
Amazing.
So that's the idea. But spermidine itself is known as a stimulator of melanin, and that's why we're getting the gray hair reversal effect.
Yeah.
Hairs that are the color of my original hair color, or I'm getting hairs that are white at the bottom but dark at the root.
That's exciting. Wow. It's so fun. So yeah, I love because that's a key thing. And I don't really think there's a solid path out there right now for repigmenting the hair. Like, I think there's understanding hydrogen peroxide in the body. I think we can uptake glutathione, but I feel like there's, this seems like the most hopeful, or combining them maybe,
Well, yeah. So yes, the accumulation of hydrogen peroxide, yes, it does cause gray hair, but spermidine will also help with that. And I think that is, that's quite interesting, because I previously, when thinking about about excess hydrogen peroxide, I thought about taking glutathione or something like N-acetylcysteine, which is a precursor to glutathione, to sort of counteract that excess accumulation of hydrogen peroxide, which happens as we age and also when we're exposed to a lot of stress. It's really interesting that melanocytes are negatively affected by the accumulation of reactive oxygen species. And this paper out of Korea that was published in December 2020 in Cell Biochemistry and Function actually said that telomere length would similarly shorten with aging melanocytes.
Oh.
That was like, whoa, wait a second. You're saying that aging melanocytes, in other words, gray hair, is like linked with telomere length? So I have literally quoted from that paper, telomere length similarly shortened with aging melanocytes. So I was thinking, okay, we definitely want whatever we can do to help the melanocytes, and we know that spermidine helps with, with keeping the telomeres long. So yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Let's keep doing that.
Yeah, let's stay on that pathway.
Yeah.
And then speaking of hair, I do find like most people are feeling something within a couple of weeks, and I feel like people maybe with shorter hair maybe see it more.
They see it faster.
Could there be a possibility for and the hair does sort of seem to thin for many people as they age, and I feel like that's probably covered with the spermidine. What about alopecia or male pattern baldness? Is there hope?
So that, I think, needs more study, and I wouldn't want to lead anyone down the garden path.
Yeah.
We've had people who've written to us have said, oh, it's great. I had one guy who said, when are you going to get it back in stock? That bald patch I had is filling in and I don't want to lose it. I've only heard from people who've had good results. But of course, those people self-select, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't done any studies on that. I do think it's possible.
Yeah.
And one of the things that spermidine does, alopecia is an autoimmune condition, and spermidine has a role with the body's immune system, and it helps. There have been studies which show that it helps with autoimmune conditions. It suppresses inflammatory functions through the FOX3 pathway, and it counteracts autoimmunity. That was a paper done by Lee in 2020, and he actually wrote, it counteracts autoimmunity. I had to read that twice. I was like, really? But what I can say is it suppresses inflammation, and that we do know. So I'm not going to make any claims about counteracting autoimmunity. I'll just say it suppresses inflammation. And so if you were able to do that, then you could, in theory, have some kind of impact on the alopecia. But again, we need those studies to be done.
In the meantime, though, maybe, you've got the autophagy, your skin might improve, nails might improve. So it's certainly worth a shot.
Yeah, and it also helps with epithelial stem cells in the hair bulge. in the hair follicle hair bulge. So, going back to where we started this conversation, that's actually quite important. When you put the hair follicle back into the anagen or growth stage, then things like melanogenesis can happen. So the production of pigment can only happen in the anagen stage. But they discovered that there were these epithelial stem cells that were there in the hair follicle as well, stimulated by spermidine. So I think it's possible. I just don't know that interplay with the immune system. I wouldn't want to make any claims that would either get me in trouble or that might be misleading.
For sure. And that we love that. I love that. Yeah, I was going to actually ask about inflammation because it really seems that, as we study aging, really, it seems like I love the expression inflammaging because aging really just seems like it's an inflammatory process. And the more that we can prevent that, then, we're looking at a healthier lifespan. So I'm wondering, just through maybe the spermidine taking care of these underlying issues, does it then help sort of lighten the load or create a new pathway for some hormonal clarity?
Yes. Actually, there was an interesting study done in Canada by Bandera and Wilson in 2019. And that, I hasten to add, it's a small study. It was done over 30 days, but it looked specifically at spermidine and spermine supplementation. And again, primidine has both. And it showed that it reduced salivary cortisol levels in men and women by 58% in 30 days.
Wow.
That's really huge.
That's huge.
Yeah. So excess cortisol is inflammatory. And, of course, we need some in the morning so that we can stand up. It helps with blood pressure. It allows us to get going. But we don't want chronic exposure to cortisol, because then we get that inflammaging that you were talking about, that chronic inflammation that leads to the telltale signs of aging, like wrinkles and, gray hair loss, these things. And so this was a really fascinating study that it normalized, in addition to decreasing cortisol levels so dramatically, it also normalized hormones, including DHEA, which is a precursor to all the major sex hormones. It also normalized testosterone, progesterone, and estradiol. That is really, really fascinating. Again, small study, yes, in humans, so very good. That's a human clinical trial. Wonderful. We do need more like that. I believe the amount that they were taking was higher. It, I think, was around 5 milligrams per day. But, more testing, and we should certainly do some trials at lower levels, because in the Alzheimer's studies, they saw positive improvement, and it didn't matter if they were getting 3 milligrams or they were getting 1 milligram in their bread rolls. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
With it seems to have sort of these tissue regenerative properties, or like liver protective. I don't know if that's sort of related, and it's just good for the intracellular matrix of things.
I think it is more it's more of a holistic effect. And some of the studies to do with organs are animal studies, and I can't speak to I can't really talk about them because, again, I wouldn't want to make any claims or lead someone down the garden path. We need those human trials to come out, and then we will know more. But if we just think about the 9 hallmarks of aging, and we apply some common sense and think, okay, these are the 9 pathways through which we will age. And I've certainly been down a number because I was prematurely aging at age 39 when I got my multiple diagnoses. But if we can just use those 9 hallmarks as levers, it knows intuitively how to do, how to heal by providing it with the right building blocks to create human health. Then we can actually help with aging systemically in the body, right?
Yeah.
And, I can't speak specifically to a particular organ, but that systemic benefit would be I'm sure would be there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's what it's like, it almost, because there's so many benefits with this substance. And it's so awesome because it's a nutrient. So we can think of it as a food that we're going to get in an abundant little extracted form.
Exactly.
So I love that. And I also love, because in the past few years, I've kept wanting to draw to myself things that really take care of things on a big level, because I feel like we've been in the micro for so long of like magnesium, calcium, vitamin D, blah, blah. And so to find these really foundational systemic things that can really help, it actually makes more sense. It does make sense that one substance could do it all, right? One ring to rule it all.
Yes, exactly. Another book written here in Oxford.
That's the one.
But it's true. And that is probably why spermidine appears everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And why it is in, again, why is it in human breast milk? Why is it in human semen? Why is it in all plants and animals? There is a reason, because it has an important role. And I think that there is this idea that systems biology works. This is a relatively new idea. I think that for many years, when we looked at medicine, areas were siloed.
Yeah.
You have a problem with your
toe.
Exactly. Go see
Your
a
teeth.
foot specialist. Yeah, exactly. But we know that these things are connected, right? And of course, in the East, these things have always been seen as
they were never disconnected.
They were never, ever disconnected.
And you can thank Descartes for separating mind and body.
That's right. Descartes. He is definitely the evil player here. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, it's this Cartesian duality that separates the mind from the body. Well, we're beginning to realize, things can cross the blood-brain barrier into the mind, just as the work of Ed Bullmore at the University of Cambridge has proven. Yeah, you can get cytokine storms in the brain and mental health illnesses, right? It's the inflamed mind. But for so many years, these things have been siloed. And that's why Dennis Noble has been so drawn to the scrolls. He would actually like to get them recognized by UNESCO as a sort of, world treasure, not just a treasure of the Japanese emperor and of the Japanese Japan itself, but something that has, that can share knowledge with the rest of the world. And it takes this wonderful systems biology approach. So yes, it was wonderful to chance upon Dennis, and he became very interested in systems biology because he was the first person to compute the rhythm of the human heart. And computational biology as a field, it was something that he ushered in, and he realized that the heartbeat wasn't actually due to it wasn't just contained in the heart. It didn't just start there, but that it was actually affected by so many other parts of the body in this sort of beautiful dance and interplay with the rest of the bodily system. And that's when he really looked into systems biology and began to promote it. And, substances like spermidine, which have a systemic effect, fit beautifully into his idea of what medicine should be. And naturally, they fit into the idea of medicine of Yoshiro Tamba, the court physician to the Japanese emperor in the 900s. I'll just say one last thing. One thing that Dennis and I have been talking about recently is that it's so interesting that Tamba spoke in 972 about what he observed was autophagy. He observed men who were able to preserve their ejaculate or retain it as having longer and better life. And it then took another 1,000 years until 2016 when another Japanese scientist won the Nobel Prize in medicine or physiology. And that was Professor Osumi, who won the Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology for his discovery of the mechanism of action of autophagy. So they are actually linked, separated by 1,000 years, but part of the same medical tradition in Japan.
That's such a beautiful connection. I love that. In wrapping up, let's talk about, like, if there's anything we haven't, I think we've kind of got the daily dose down on that, where we can get it in that generous offer that you've provided, and anything that I've missed or some special studies coming down the pipe or something like that.
I suppose I might talk about just circadian rhythm.
Oh, yeah.
I know that, because I know that you've experienced better sleep. Pretty much across the board, people say they experience good sleep. And I think that is really quite fascinating, that it helps with resetting their circadian rhythm if you've got jet lag or if you are older. And as a postmenopausal woman myself, I know how hard it is to get a good night's sleep. And spermidine is definitely part of my stack. So I started noticing on my Oura ring, and most of us biohackers have the Oura ring. I noticed that I was just getting so much more deep sleep.
Me too.
And I usually get 90 minutes of REM and 90 minutes of deep. And suddenly I was getting 2 hours, 2.5 hours of deep. And deep is so important because that's when the glymphatic system is activated, when those channels between the different compartments of the brain are revealed as those brain compartments shrink, and you have cerebrospinal fluid flowing between the compartments, taking toxins away. But they also theorize bringing nutrients in. That just makes sense. And I would say that, we all know about beauty sleep, right? We've all grown up with that term. And it definitely helps with that. But again, under the hood, I think it's helping with that glymphatic system. And that may well be another way that it helps with, with memory and cognition, not just the autophagy, but taking away the waste.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And yes, my sleep also with my Oura ring, like deep sleep. The other night was up to 3 hours of deep sleep.
Really?
Yeah, I had 2 full hours of REM. I mean, It's not happening every night.
Yeah, that's the same for me too. Same for me too. Same for Amy Lamott, one of our clinical advisors. Yes, absolutely.
So that's super exciting, because then again, if you're sleeping, just getting the deep sleep, then your body is just taking care of a whole bunch of other stuff too, because it's getting the deep healing rest that it needs. And that's when a lot of magical stuff occurs. Some of it we know scientifically, like the glymphatic system, and some of it we're going to discover 30 years from now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, on the autophagy front, we are running the symposium at Oxford on autophagy and aging, and inviting lots of experts, leading scientists around the world to present on this very topic. And I hope that by sharing their knowledge, we will actually close the time gap from when bench science makes a huge breakthrough discovery, as it did with autophagy, and the time to when a consumer, a person like you and me, can actually take advantage of that science and incorporate it into our lives to live a longer, better, more
Awesome. I'm so glad you're progressing the field of study and helping bring these gems to us. Because if we're going to do anti-aging stuff, there's really no time like the present.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Especially, I'm like, we're 56. Oh dear. Yes. Yeah. No. And actually, I have to say, I really feel like this is the new prime. And I feel better now than I did at 39 when my body was falling apart and I felt it was betraying me. I feel great. I've gone through menopause. I am comfortable in my skin. I have energy. I have huge ability to take in lots of information, lots of studies. And, I just feel like this is really the new prime of life. So,
so 50 is the new 30.
50 is the new 30 and 60 is the new 40. And I want everyone out there to know that it's possible to live your best life, after 50. And the best is yet to come.
I love that. I love that. And I do feel like, again, bringing it to, all the people that love libations, because I feel like, everybody's loving libations because of its effects on melasma and skin and glow and hair shine.
Yep.
So the fact that we can take all of this beauty and then just sprinkle some spermidine on top, it just seems so symbiotic.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It is really wonderful. And I do love your products. They are just wonderful. I love how you've also gone through the oral care route too, because it is so wrapped up in, again, that systems biology approach. It has so many effects on the rest of the body. And the benefit of both is, radiant skin and hair and the energy to live a more vital life.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's have that.
Yeah.
So Oxford Health Span, I believe, that's the website where everybody can get the Spermidine.
Yes.
And I highly recommend, I feel like everybody will feel something, with just one bottle. I do recommend, I feel like 3 bottles if you can, because I feel like that'll really get you out of the gate.
Yeah.
And you are so generous. You've made a 25% off, which is amazing.
Yes.
So we're going to offer that special, and then we'll have the links on the page. And the code is Renegade Beauty, all caps. So it's the name, just easy to remember. It's the name of my book. And we just thank you so much for just bringing this to market. Thank goodness.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do. You're so genuine. Your products are so clean. They're so full of nourishment and wonder, and you just sprinkle your magic everywhere. I love what you do. Your book, Renegade Beauty, is fantastic, and I highly recommend to everybody. I just got my copy, and let's keep sprinkling the magic around, right?
Yeah.
And sharing the wonder.
Thank you so much, Leslie, and
absolutely.
Yeah, I could talk about this forever. So thank you.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you very much.
This conversation is for informational purposes only. Always seek the advice of your physician or healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen. For more information, visit livinglibations.com.